Guys, I am super excited to have our next guest on the program. He comes in from Sportsbetting.ag. His name is Robert Cooper, and he's right here on the Full Court Press. Robert, thank you so much for joining the program.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Drew.
You're very welcome. And so the first thing that I want to get to here is to kind of give you an opportunity to maybe kill any noise that's out there. There was a 60 Minutes edition that came out a couple of weeks ago that I watched, and they were talking about how there was concern with athletic directors and coaches about betting at the collegiate level, particularly in basketball with the Final Four that was going on at the time. What do you say to people who have concerns about sports betting and allowing it to come into the ranks on a national scale?
Well, what I would say, Drew, is that there's a lot of antagonists out there, but the root of this is that sports betting has gone on since the dawn of time. This isn't anything new to America, new to the world. From whenever two guys could throw a stone, further than the other, people are taking bets on it. And when that happens, when you have a competition between two or more people, there's always going to be outside influences trying to gauge what may happen in that competition, or prompt some sort of outcome. That's just the way it is. That's how human nature works. There's the old adage: if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. I mean, let's not just look at sports betting. Let's look at the stock market. I mean, stock market is a robust version of sports betting, and insider trading happens all the time. And if you want to talk about the integrity of the stock market and trading and buying stuff like that, then let's look at that, because that is certainly something that is prevalent, and we see people like Phil Mickelson getting involved in insider trading. So it's I think that the point that they're missing here is that Americans have been betting on sports legally or illegally for decades and decades. It's for almost maybe even 100 years now, going back into the baseball days. And corruption happens. There's people that throw games. It's happened before. So allowing it to be legal, nationwide, I don't think is going to increase that possibility. The possibility is always there. It's always been there. It happens. I don't think it's just going to all of a sudden blow up. And really, if the U.S. government gets to a broader, instead of a state by state legislation on sports betting, if they go to a full nationwide, I think they could actually, you might see a decrease in some of these issues that are brought up.
Well, and along those lines, it's amazing to me that the NFL, of all people, they have been so critical about keeping the betting away from their brand. And yet they recently made it to where casinos now that do these, bettings can now give them sponsorship. So what does that say about how far we've come in the direction, not only just the NFL, but sports in general in terms of betting and seeing it in a positive light?
Yeah, I think that certainly, the NFL is that shows me, they've been very hypocritical throughout this entire process. I mean, it's unfortunate because they were really cast a black shadow over the sports gaming market, and an unnecessary one, considering that the NFL wouldn't be the NFL without betting. They would probably lose. I'd venture to say 10 to 15% of their fan base if people couldn't bet on their games. And that's a massive chunk. And so I think that to go back to your question, I think that we see these partnerships happening. We see certain data being provided to leagues and to betting entities. I think that's all a good thing. I saw a great question raised the other day that if we're going to start doing this, then we need to have college sports, basketball and football need to have injury reports as well, so that everybody is kind of on the same playing field, and there are certain people aren't getting certain edges.
We're talking to Robert Cooper of Sportsbetting.ag right here on the Full Court Press. I am your host, Drew Duncan. And in switching rapid fire gears here a little bit, a 31 comeback the other night by the Clippers to defeat the Warriors. When it comes to betting game to game, particularly in the playoffs, as opposed to betting on maybe an entire series or who will go to the finals and win, how do you advise people when it comes to game betting in the NBA playoffs?
Well, it certainly is a little trickier than the regular season because you've got these series, and sometimes you've got to really analyze the motivation for some of these teams. We saw the Raptors come out last night. Sixers the same as well. The two teams that are obviously superior to their opponents that got beat on their home floors the first night. Well, there's the old zigzag theory where if team loses, you come back and bet them the next day. That hasn't really held up in the last maybe 5-10 years or so, but it still is somewhat of a I guess something to keep in your back pocket, and we saw it play out very well last night where the Raptors and the Sixers just easily covered the spreads and blew out their opponents. So it's difficult. I think that people should really look at the series prices as well whenever they're considering playing, the games and stuff like that. Analyze where the series numbers are. Can you find some expected value there? So it's something where you've got to stay on top of the team's, I guess, motivation in a sense. You've got a team like Detroit Pistons. Andre Drummond gets tossed in the first game. He's obviously frustrated. Blake Griffin doesn't look like he might even play this series. That team, you just got to wonder where the mindset of that team is right now and how they're going to even, get up for the next game against a Bucks squad that is obviously just firing on all cylinders, and they're so excited to have this opportunity as a 1 seed.
I'm sure that the majority of odds makers would have the Golden State Warriors coming out of the West. When it comes to, and kind of piggybacking on what you're talking about, getting the feel for the team, where they at, what's the overall goal game to game, and how they could potentially destroy them along the way, who do you see in the West as a potential surprise, or are you going with the Golden State Warriors?
Yeah, certainly going with the Warriors. I don't think that, there's a reason they've been, 1 to 2 odds, anywhere from minus 180 to minus 250 all season long to win not just the Western Conference, but to win the championship. It's even without DeMarcus Cousins, it's a whole head above every other team. And unfortunately, for basketball, I think it's hurt the NBA a little bit to have this super team, and I think we're going to see it broken up a little bit as Durant leaves this summer. I think a team that it's difficult to project the Rockets, given they were there last year. I think they're a team that can compete with the Warriors if they're healthy 100%. They're not going to have the home court advantage as they did last year, but if Chris Paul stays healthy and maybe they beat them last year. So that's a team that should be right there at the end with them. I think it'll be those two in the end. But I don't see anybody beating the Warriors.
And it's amazing to me that you brought that up about Golden State and not having DeMarcus Cousins, because I saw a bet line that it dramatically creased them not having him in the lineup, even though he's not really a guy who started for the team. I mean, they played half the season without him. So if somebody comes to you and they say, hey, look, Robert, DeMarcus Cousins isn't in, or so-and-so isn't in anymore, how do I change the way that I bet going into these next couple of games for Golden State or any team for that matter?
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that up, Drew. We actually sent out an infographic yesterday that just kind of outlined how injuries impact the odds and the spread, and I did see that a Vegas shop said that they adjusted their futures without Cousins, which that's just kind of a PR play. Cousins has no almost zero bearing on their futures odds, at least in our book. And we actually sent out this release that we put a lot of the playoff players in 4 different tiers and what they're actually worth to a spread. So if and actually Cousins, believe it or not, was in tier 4, meaning he was worth 1 to 2 points to a spread. So if he's absent, the Warriors may be 8.5 point favorites at LA in game 3. Maybe they're 9 point favorites with them. It's just such a stacked team. There's a lot of factors that go into the value of a player being out and what he means to the line. And certainly there's the roster depth. So for example, whenever Kevin Durant, when he was in Oklahoma City, his player value to a line was much more than whenever he went to Golden State. It actually decreases because he has those complementary players around him. And even Steph Curry's, Klay Thompson's, Draymond Green's, all of their values also decrease as well whenever Durant came. So whenever you take Boogie Cousins out of that equation, it's not, sure, they're going to lose a great rotational guy that, is coming off the bench and he's a superstar on a Kings team. But it's just a kind of a blip in the radar on a stacked Warriors squad, and it's not going to, devalue them too greatly.
Robert, this is the part of the program where I give all of my interviewees an opportunity to say whatever it is that's on their mind. There is no right or wrong answer here. The floor is 100% yours.
Wow. All right. I would like to say that we are certainly Sportsbetting.ag is a great place to come play. If your state's not ready to have sports betting yet, then please check us out online. That we have an outstanding website that's very user friendly, and you can deposit with credit card or Bitcoin or however you see fit, and you can be up and running and betting on tonight's NBA game. And certainly we're going to have some Week 1 NFL spreads on the board later this evening, as well as the 2019 schedule is released tonight.
Robert, thank you so much for joining the program.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Drew.
You're very welcome. All right, everybody. He is Robert Cooper of Sportsbetting.ag. I am Drew Duncan, host of the Full Court Press. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. Don't forget, when you share this post, use the hashtag Don't You Dare Touch That Dial. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.